The Dragon Court did not let ash-maids touch victory flags. That was why they made Elira Ashen polish them with her bare hands. The command was not meant to honor the feast. It was meant to remind every noble in the Ember Hall what she was. A scarred servant girl allowed near royal glory only when glory needed cleaning. Above her, 12 dragon war flags hung from black iron spears, each one painted with red gold flame, each one stitched with the name of a battle the court called glorious. The banners were older than some noble houses, smoked by real dragon fire, and carried through cities the court no longer named. Elira knelt beneath them with a bowl of ash oil beside her knees. The entire court watched. That was the point. A servant could polish in silence anywhere. A scarred ash-maid could be humiliated only in public. "Use your hands," Lord Marshal Caedran ordered. Elira looked at the cloth hanging before her. The first flag bore the name of Sereth Ford, painted in fierce gold letters across a dragon's wing. She knew that name. Every child in the lower kitchens knew it. The singers called it the battle where Dragon King Luceryn Veyr burned an enemy host until the river boiled. But Elira had washed armor from Sereth Ford. The armor had not smelled like boiled river. It had smelled like rain, surrender, and smoke forced into a story after the bodies were gone. Her fingers curled once inside the ash oil. Caedran saw the hesitation. He was an older man with a narrow face, iron gray hair, and a marshal's cloak clasped with dragon bone. Nothing about him looked cruel at first glance. That made him more dangerous. Cruel men enjoyed pain. Caedran used pain as a tool and called it order. "Is the cloth too sacred for you?" he asked. Soft laughter moved through the nobles. Elira kept her head lowered, not because she was meek, because if she lifted it too soon, they would see hatred before she had the strength to survive the cost. The left side of her face still carried the pale, twisted marks of old dragon ash. The scar began near her temple, crossed her cheek, and vanished beneath the collar of her plain gray dress. It had not taken her beauty completely. That was part of why the court disliked looking at her. Ruin was easier to mock when it was complete. "She is afraid to stain it," Lady Seraphine murmured from the front row. More laughter. Elira dipped her hands into the ash oil. It was cold. Everything in the Ember Hall was warm except what belonged to servants. At the far end of the hall, Dragon King Luceryn Veyr sat upon the Ember Throne. He wore black ceremonial armor chased with dark gold, a crown like folded dragon wings resting above his brow. His hair was midnight black, his eyes a strange ember gold that made most people look away. Elira did not. Not fully. She looked once, quickly, because she wanted to know whether he had ordered this. Luceryn's expression revealed nothing. That was the problem with kings. Silence could be mercy, guilt, or permission, and servants died trying to guess the difference. Caedran stepped closer. "Polish the king's victories, ash-maid." The word struck harder than her name would have. Elira pressed her bare palm against the Sereth Ford flag. The cloth should have been rough. It was hot, not hot enough to burn skin. Hot like something trapped beneath it had heard her touch and remembered flame. Elira froze. The painted dragon wing under her palm darkened. A thin line of red gold fire crawled backward across the banner. The court laughter faded. Elira pulled her hand away. Too late. A small bead of blood had opened on her palm, where an old splinter of dragon bone in the flagstaff had cut her skin. The drop touched the cloth. The flag inhaled. Every flame painted on it reversed. Gasps tore through the Ember Hall as the fire ran backward from the dragon's mouth, across the wing, into the stitched battle name. The gold letters of Sereth Ford twisted, blackened, and peeled apart. Beneath them, another name appeared. Not a battle name, a surrender record. Sereth Ford parley granted. Elira stopped breathing. The flag burned brighter. The painted scene changed. No longer a dragon army crushing enemies beneath fire. Now the court saw a rain-soaked ford, kneeling soldiers with weapons laid down, white cloths tied around spear shafts, women and children huddled behind carts. Then the flames ran backward again. A new image formed. A man in royal war armor lowering his sword. Luceryn, younger, bloodied, alive with fury, but holding back. His voice echoed from the cloth. "Spare those who yield." The court went silent. Elira looked toward the throne. This time, Luceryn had gone still in a way no king should go still before his own nobles. Not because he had been accused, because he had been remembered. Caedran moved fast. He seized Elira's wrist before she could stand. "Enough," he said. But the flag had tasted blood. The second banner caught. Then, the third. Then all 12 dragon war flags burst into backward flame. Not red, not gold, blue-white. The color of fire, remembering what it had been forced to destroy. Names peeled open above the court like wounds. Victory became surrender. Conquest became treaty. Slaughter became mercy. The Ember Hall filled with the sound of battles undoing themselves. Elira tried to pull free, but Caedran's grip tightened until pain shot up her arm. "You little ash rat," he whispered. "What did you wake?" Elira stared at the burning flags. For years she had scrubbed war ash from floors, armor, boots, and feast dishes. She had breathed it until her lungs hurt. She had worn it in her scar. She had been told ash was what remained after victory. Now she understood. Ash was what remained after truth had been burned. The largest flag above the throne split down the center. Its backward flames gathered into words so bright every noble had to shield their eyes. The king ordered mercy. The court recorded slaughter. Luceryn rose from the ember throne. Caedran released Elira, as if her skin had become fire. But the flames were not finished. One final line burned across the royal war banner. "Name the hand that changed the record." The blue-white fire bent downward. Not toward the throne, toward Lord Marshal Caedran Veyr. For the first time that night, the Marshal looked like a man standing where history could finally reach him. No one rushed to save the Marshal. The court rushed to save the lie. The moment the blue-white fire bent toward Lord Marshal Caedran Veyr, 3 nobles surged from their seats, not to shield him, but to smother the burning flags. One seized a velvet cloak and threw it toward the Sereth Ford banner. Another shouted for water. A war priest lifted both hands and began chanting a suppression rite in the old flame tongue. The cloak touched the banner. It burned backward. The velvet did not catch fire. It unwove. Thread by thread, dye by dye, until the noble stood holding a handful of black lint and staring at his bare palm. The war priest stopped chanting. The blue-white fire kept reading. Caedran recovered faster than fear should have allowed. His face hardened, and when he spoke, his voice carried the trained weight of authority. "Forged fire," he said. "Ash corruption. The girl has contaminated sacred war relics with servant blood." Elira stood beneath the burning flags with her injured palm pressed against her chest. The cut was small. The pain was not. The backward flame had entered her hand like ice pretending to be fire. It crawled along the old scar on her left side, beneath her cheek, down toward her throat. Not burning her flesh, waking what the ash had buried there. Caedran pointed at her. "Bind the ash-maid." Guards moved. Dragon King Luceryn Veyr spoke before they reached her. "No one touch her." The command did not come loud. It did not need to. Every guard in the Ember Hall stopped, as if the stone itself had taken hold of their boots. Elira looked toward the throne. Luceryn stood before it now, one hand resting on the black arm of the ember throne. His face was controlled, but his eyes were not. The flames had remembered his mercy, and that seemed to wound him more deeply than accusation. Caedran turned to him. "Majesty, with respect, war relic instability must be contained. If the flags continue burning, every battle record in the hall may be compromised." "Then let them burn," Luceryn said. A silence struck the court. Caedran's jaw tightened. "Majesty." Luceryn descended one step. "Read all 12. Elira felt the words move through the hall like a blade drawn slowly. Not rescue. Not trust. A choice. Dangerous, public, and not yet enough. The flags answered him. The second banner split open with a hiss of blue-white fire. Its painted victory scene peeled away, revealing a burned field where kneeling soldiers held surrender chains above their heads. A dragon circled overhead but did not strike. A voice from the cloth echoed. "Treaty accepted." Then another voice, colder, nearer to the archives. "Record them as slain." The court shifted. The third banner burned backward. A city gate opened in surrender. Children carried white ash bowls, dragon soldiers lowered their blades. Then the image twisted, rewritten by red gold script into a heroic conquest. Elira stared upward, horror tightening her chest. Sereth Ford was not one lie. It was the first thread in a woven cloth. Caedran raised his voice. You see? Fragmented flame, memory distortion. The relics are collapsing under forbidden ash contact. Elira looked at him. If the flags are lying now, then they lied for years under your roof. The court gasped. Caedran's eyes cut to her. Servants do not interpret war. No, Elira said, voice shaking but clear. We clean what war leaves behind. The blue-white flame brightened along her scar. Pain flashed behind her left eye. For one terrible breath, she saw the Ember Hall differently, not as marble, banners, nobles, and gold, but as layers of smoke. Smoke from old battlefields. Smoke from treaty fires. Smoke from bodies that had been named enemy after they were already dead. She swayed. Luceryn moved one step toward her. Elira raised her uninjured hand to stop him. Do not protect me, she said, if you still mean to protect the record. The words reached him. She saw it. Not comfort, not softness. Impact. Luceryn stopped. Caedran seized the pause. Majesty. She speaks sedition beneath a glamour. The court must not be ruled by a bleeding maid in unstable cloth. A war priest near the banners swallowed. Lord Marshal, the flame color is not common corruption. Caedran turned slowly. Choose your next words with care. The priest lowered his eyes. But the damage had been done. Luceryn looked at him. What is it? The priest's throat worked. Reverse flame, Majesty. Forbidden witness fire. It does not invent. It recalls what ordinary flame was made to consume. Elira's breath stopped. Caedran's face went still. Too still. Luceryn saw it. You knew the term. Caedran said nothing. The fourth banner ignited. This one did not show battle. It showed a chamber beneath the war archives. 5 hands pressed over a fresh record. Marshal, priest, archivist, counselor, and seal-bearer. The original parchment read, Mercy granted. A red gold flame passed over it. When the fire ended, the words had changed. Enemy destroyed by royal command. Elira felt the flame tear through her palm. She cried out before she could stop herself. The court turned toward her. Blue-white light had begun to crawl under her skin, tracing the old ash scar on her face like a map. The flags were not merely using her blood. They were reading the ash her body had been forced to keep. Luceryn's voice sharpened. Stop the right, the war priest whispered. Majesty, there is no right. Caedran said quickly, there is if we bind her. Luceryn looked at him. Caedran did not step back. If she is the vessel, cut the vessel from the flame. The records will stabilize. Elira understood the sentence before the court did. Cut her from the flame. Not move her. Not heal her. Kut. Luceryn's expression changed. For the first time, the Dragon King looked not merely shocked. Dangerous. No blade, he said. Caedran's voice hardened. Then you choose the maid over the kingdom's war memory. Luceryn stepped down from the throne fully. I choose to hear what my kingdom made of my name. The 5th banner burst open. Then the 6th. Then all remaining flags burned at once, their blue-white fire racing backward through years of red-gold lies. Voices rose from them in layers. Surrendered captains, spared villages, treaty envoys, prisoners released, healers protected, children carried out of burning streets before the records called them casualties. Then one flag above the western arch darkened. Unlike the others, its fire did not run clean. It stuttered, choked. Elira felt the same choking inside her scar. Luceryn looked up. What battle is that? No one answered. Caedran whispered, Do not read that one. The flag heard him. Its stitched battle name peeled open, not into a surrender record, into a royal order. The king's mercy was to be erased. The marshal's victory was to remain. The blue-white fire gathered beneath the words. Then, it wrote one final line across the cloth. The first hand was not the king's. Elira looked at Caedran. So did Luceryn. The backward flame dropped from the western banner like a falling star and struck the marshal's dragon-bone clasp. It cracked, and inside the broken clasp, something began to burn. Not fire. A folded record. The dragon-bone clasp was not holding Caedran's cloak together. It was holding the lie shut. The broken clasp smoked against his chest, split down its carved spine by the blue-white reverse flame. For one breath, no one moved. Not the nobles, not the war priests, not even Dragon, King Luceryn Veyr, who stood below the ember throne with the light of 12 burning flags reflected in his eyes. Inside the clasp, something folded and blackened began to open. Not fire, a record. Caedran's hand shot toward it. The reverse flame struck first. It ran backward across his fingers, not burning flesh away, but peeling old soot from his skin, as if his hand had touched too many rewritten orders and could no longer pretend it was clean. Caedran hissed and pulled back. The folded ash record unfolded in the air, thin, black-edged, sealed with a strip of dragonbone powder and old red wax. It should have crumbled after so many years. Instead, the blue-white flame held it open like a wound forced to breathe. Luceryn stepped closer. "What is that?" Caedran's face hardened. "A martial seal strip. Nothing more." The flags answered with a low crackle. Elira felt the sound beneath her scar. Pain spread along the pale ash marks on her cheek and throat. Not sharp this time. Deep. Familiar. Like a door inside her skin had recognized the seal before she did. She pressed one hand to her face. The ash under her skin warmed. Luceryn saw it. His gaze moved from the record to Elira's scar, then back to Caedran. "Why does her scar answer your seal?" Caedran said nothing. That silence was worse than denial. The ash record turned in the flame, revealing lines written in a cramped martial hand. Original mercy order received. Royal command. Spare surrendered households. Martial correction required before public feast record. Elira read the words with a coldness spreading through her chest. Luceryn had not been remembered once. He had been erased again and again. Caedran lifted his chin. Mercy weakens conquest when displayed incorrectly. The court breathed in. There it was. Not fear. Doctrine. Caedran looked at Luceryn as if instructing a younger ruler. A dragon king may spare lives on the field. A kingdom cannot be taught to admire hesitation. War records must forge obedience. If the people remember mercy too clearly, they begin asking why they were ever afraid. Luceryn's eyes darkened. "You made me a monster to strengthen my throne. I made your throne survivable." Elira looked at the burning flags, then at the ash record, then at Caedran. "My scar knows that seal," she said. The words came out before she could soften them. Caedran's eyes cut to her. "Your scar knows ash, nothing more." "No," Elira said. It knew before the fire opened it. The blue-white flame brightened along her cheek. A memory flashed behind her eyes. A lower archive chamber, smoke pressed against stone, bundles of old cloth, records burning in iron basins while ash-maids were forced to kneel and breathe through wet linen. A woman coughing blood into her hand. A marshal saying, "If the truth must burn, let the ash carry it where parchment cannot." Elira staggered. Luceryn moved again, but stopped when she raised her hand. She did not want pity while the court was still deciding whether truth counted. The reverse flame lifted from the clasp and touched the scar on her face. Not gently, it read. The ember hall vanished for a heartbeat. Elira saw two lines of the same house. One line in martial black, sealing records, correcting war, turning surrender into victory. One line in servant gray, carrying burned records in lungs, scars, hair, and skin. The same name split by duty. Vos. Elira's breath caught. She looked at Caedran. "Why do we share a name?" The court froze. Caedran's expression did not change quickly enough. That was his mistake. Whispers moved through the nobles. Elira Ashen. That was the name the lower halls used. Ashen was not a family name. It was a function. A servant mark. A word given to girls who cleaned war, soot until the court forgot they had ever belonged to blood. The reverse flame wrote across the air in thin blue-white script. Ashen. Assigned to record bearers after confiscation of the Voss witness branch. Elira could not breathe. Caedran's voice came low. "You were spared." "No," she whispered. "We were renamed." The flags burned brighter. The court had not buried the truth. It had made servants breathe it until their scars became archives. Luceryn turned on Caedran. "You split your own bloodline." Caedran's mouth tightened. The Voss line had two duties. One branch preserved order. The other carried what order could not display. Carried? Elira said. Her voice shook now, but did not break. You mean burned? Caedran looked at her at last with something close to disgust. Your branch was never meant to speak. Ash remembers without ruling. That was the mercy given to you. Elira almost laughed. Mercy. How easily powerful men use the word after taking everything that made it true. Caedran raised his hand toward the guards. Cut her from the flame before the flags turned servant residue into royal evidence. The guards drew blades. Luceryn's voice struck the hall. No blade. The guards stopped. But Elira looked at him sharply. Stopping the blade is not enough. Luceryn turned to her. The firelight made his face look carved from grief and danger. Elira held his gaze. Name why he needed it. The hall went silent. Luceryn looked back at Caedran. The Dragon King did not ask this time. He commanded the record. Show why. The clasp screamed. Not like a person. Like a seal breaking after years of pretending silence was loyalty. The ash record opened wider, and the blue-white flame carried its memory across the ember hall. A younger Luceryn stood on a battlefield after surrender, lowering his sword. Caedran, younger too, stood behind him with the martial seal in hand. Luceryn's voice from the memory said, Record mercy. Caedran waited until the king turned away. Then he pressed the dragonbone seal into the parchment. The words changed. Mercy granted became enemies destroyed. The court watched the first lie happen. Elira's scar burned so brightly that tears filled her eyes. Caedran said through clenched teeth, A merciful conqueror invites rebellion. Luceryn's voice was deadly quiet. A false monster invites obedience. Caedran turned toward the guards again, fury breaking through his control. Cut her hands. This time, Elira did not step back. She placed both palms against the burning flag. Blue-white fire flooded her scars. Every old ash mark opened like a line of script. The ash record twisted, opened to its final fold, and revealed one last signature beneath the martial seal. Not Caedran's. Not Luceryn's. A witness signature written in ash instead of ink. Elira Vos. Not written years ago. Written now, in ash that had waited inside her skin. The name struck the ember hall like a door opening under the floor. Elira stared at it, shaking. Caedran went pala, and every war flag in the hall bent its flame toward her, as if the court had finally learned the ash-maid was not standing beside the record. She was inside it. Elira Vos was not the name the court had given her. It was the name the ash had refused to forget. The letters burned in the air before her, written in blue-white flame and ash pulled from beneath her own skin. Elira stared at them until the ember hall blurred around the edges. For years she had answered to Ashen because ash-maids were not supposed to have houses, only duties. They cleaned war soot. They carried bowls. They lowered their eyes. But the fire had not written Elira Ashen. It had written Elira Vos. The nobles recoiled as if her true name were more dangerous than the burning flags. Lord Marshal Caedran Vos recovered first. False witness contamination, he said. The ash has taken the nearest bloodline name and attached it to a servant body. It is an old corruption pattern. The flags cracked above him. Blue-white flame ran across the nearest banner and wrote in thin, living script, Living Witness Branch confirmed. The words did not shout. That made them worse. Elira felt every old ash mark along her face, throat, and hands open like script. The pain was not only in her skin now, it lived deeper, in places where smoke had settled years before and waited for fire that could read backward. Dragon King Luceryn Veyr looked at Caedran. Explain the witness branch. Caedran's jaw tightened. A discarded line, necessary in older wars. Necessary for what? For carrying what could not be preserved in royal form. Elira's laugh came out broken. You mean the truth? Caedran looked at her with cold dislike. Truth without structure destroys kingdoms. No, Elira said. Truth without rank destroys men who built rank on lies. The court murmured. Luceryn did not silence her. Caedran saw that and struck at the wound beneath it. Majesty, the ash-maid speaks because the fire flatters her. Give a servant one family name and she thinks herself a court. The old shame should have bent her head. It did not. The flags were burning too brightly for her to pretend she was only what they called her. Luceryn stepped closer to the blazing record. How many ash-maids carried burned records? Caedran's expression stilled. A war priest looked away. An archivist near the pillars lowered his hands. Elira saw the answer before anyone spoke. Luceryn did too. How many? He repeated. Caedran's voice came quiet and hard. Enough to keep the throne clean. The words struck the hall. Elira turned toward him slowly. You did not keep it clean. You made us breathe what you would not name. The flags answered with a low, blue-white roar. Images flashed inside the cloth. Ash-maids kneeling in archive smoke, girls coughing into gray rags, old women brushing burned parchment dust into clay bowls, scarred servants carrying sealed baskets past nobles who never asked what had been burned below their feet. Elira scarflatted. She almost fell. Luceryn moved, then stopped himself before touching her. Good. He was learning the difference between protecting a woman and stealing the shape of her testimony. Caedran raised his hand. Cut her hands from the flags. The guards hesitated. Luceryn's voice was colder than dragon steel. Lord Marshal Caedran Veyr, by royal command, you are stripped of martial authority until the war records are examined. For one heartbeat, the hall seemed to accept it. Then every flag burned black at the edges. The reverse flame rode across the air. Martial authority cannot be stripped while false victories remain crowned. Luceryn went still. Caedran smiled. Not broadly, just enough to show he had expected the law to protect him. The records know the crown, Caedran said. Your Majesty may despise me, but your titles still stand on the victories my office preserved. As long as you wear them, the martial seal remains lawful. The court turned toward Luceryn. Elira understood the trap. If he kept his glorious war titles, Caedran's authority survived. If he let the flags rename him, the court would see every title built over mercy, surrender, and altered records. The feared conqueror would lose the myth that made armies kneel. Luceryn looked up at the 12 burning flags. The flames reflected in his ember gold eyes. For the first time, Elira saw the weight of every false victory the court had placed on his shoulders. Not only accusation, not only shame, a cage made from fear people mistook for power. Caedran spoke softly. Do not do this, Majesty. A beloved king is argued with. A feared king is obeyed. Luceryn answered without looking at him. Then perhaps obedience has cost too much. He turned to the flags. His voice carried through the ember hall. Rename them. The first flag split open. Then the second. Then all 12. Red gold victory names peeled away like burned paint. Beneath them, blue-white flame wrote new titles across the banners. Mercy at Sereth Ford. Treaty at Val's Gate. Prisoners spared at Cindermoor. Children released from Ashen Bridge. Surrender honored at Blackpire Field. One by one, the court watched the Dragon King's conquests become acts of mercy. His own kingdom had been taught to fear. Elira felt the pain in her scars ease. Not vanish. Ease. The flags were no longer forcing all truth through her body alone. Luceryn stood beneath the burning banners as his legend changed above him. Then the largest royal flag opened. The one above the Ember Throne. Its blue-white fire swallowed every old title. Flame, Tyrant, City, Burner, Ash, Crowned Conqueror, Dragon of Ruin. Beneath them, one title appeared. The Mercy King. The hall fell silent. Elira looked at Luceryn. For a moment the title seemed almost beautiful. Then Caedran laughed. It was a low, terrible sound. Luceryn turned toward him. Caedran's smile was bloodless. You think that title saves you? The broken dragonbone clasp in his hand opened again. A thin strip of black ash record slid out, burning at the edges. Caedran lifted it for the court to see. The Mercy King was never an honor, he said. The blue-white flame bent around the record, and the words appeared clear enough for every noble to read. Death warrant prepared in the event Dragon King Luceryn Veyr fails to uphold the conquest record. Elira's breath caught. Caedran looked at Luceryn with the calm of a man who had not lost power, only revealed the knife beneath it. The Mercy King, he said, was the name we wrote for the ruler we intended to kill. The death warrant did not silence the Ember Hall. It hollowed it. Every noble stared at the black ash record in Caedran's hand, as if treason looked different when it wore an official seal. The words burned at the edges, steady and blue-white, not freshly written, not forged in panic. Prepared. Waiting. Dragon King Luceryn Veyr stood beneath the renamed flags while the title Mercy King glowed above him like a crown made from a blade. Elira could barely breathe. For years, the court had called him conqueror so no one would see the mercy buried underneath. Now she understood the second cage. If Luceryn ever became too merciful to control, they had already prepared the language to kill him. Caedran folded the ash record between two fingers. A kingdom cannot survive, a ruler who teaches enemies that surrender is safe. Luceryn's eyes darkened. You wrote my execution before I betrayed you. No, Caedran said. We wrote it in case you betrayed the conquest that made you king. The flags snapped above them without wind. Elira felt the reverse flame pull at her scars again. The title Mercy King had eased one pain, but the death warrant opened another. Her ash marks warmed from cheek to throat, then down along both arms, as if her body recognized not only records of war, but records of planned murder. She looked at Caedran. Who is we? The question cut sharper than any accusation. Caedran did not answer. The flags did. Blue-white fire ran from the death warrant to the 12 banners. One by one, shadows appeared inside the flames. A martial seal, a war priest's crescent brand, an archivist's inked thumb, a counselor's black ring, a noblewoman's pearl dagger resting on parchment. Not one traitor. A circle. Luceryn looked up slowly. The Ash Council. A shudder moved through the hall. Elira had heard that name only in servants' whispers. Never as a real body. Never as something that stood behind the throne. In the lower halls, the Ash Council was what maids blamed when records vanished, when soldiers returned with different orders than the king had given, when widows were told their husbands had died gloriously in battles no one could locate. Caedran's face remained calm. The Ash Council preserved the realm when royal conscience became unreliable. Elira's hands curled. Royal conscience, she repeated. That is what you call mercy when it gets in your way? Caedran glanced at her. You are proof of why mercy is dangerous. A spared witness becomes a weapon. No, Elira said. A burned witness becomes an archive. The flames brightened along her scars. Every old ash mark opened like script again. The pain almost drove her to her knees, but she stayed standing. She would not let the court remember this moment as the place where the ash-maid collapsed. Luceryn saw the cost. His jaw tightened, but he did not reach for her. Instead, he faced the court. Every member of the Ash Council will be named. Caedran smiled faintly. Not by your command. The death warrant flared. The words changed. If the Mercy King invokes public record, remove the witness vessel first. Elira felt the line enter the hall like a thrown knife. The guards looked at her. So did the war priests. So did every noble who had just realized their safety might depend on her silence. Luceryn moved before they did. No one touch her. Caedran lifted the warrant. You already gave that command. The record has answered. The witness vessel is the condition. Luceryn took one step toward him. She has a name. Caedran's eyes flicked toward the burning signature still hovering near the flags. Elira Voss was confiscated with her branch, he said. Ashen is the lawful servant designation. Elira's breath caught. Confiscated. Not hidden. Not lost. Owned. The flags hissed. The reverse flame rode across the air. Witness branch confiscation unlawful. Caedran's expression sharpened. The court saw it. For the first time, his doctrine had been contradicted by the very records he claimed to protect. Elira forced her voice through the pain. Say it again. Caedran looked at her. She lifted her scarred chin. Say my name the way the ash remembers it. His mouth tightened. Luceryn turned to him, voice low. Say it. Caedran's silence stretched. Elira stepped forward, her palms pressed against the nearest burning flag. Blue-white flame climbed around her fingers, cold and merciless. I carried your records in my skin, she said. You do not get to call me by the name you used to bury them. Caedran's face went hard. Elira Voss. The moment he said it, the flags roared. The death warrant split down the center. A hidden clause burned open beneath the execution order. Witness consent required before Mercy King removal. The hall froze. Luceryn stared at the words. Elira understood before he did. The Ash Council had planned to kill him, but even their old law required the witness branch to make the removal lawful. That was why her line had not been destroyed completely. That was why ash-maids had been kept close to war records, close to banners, close to the throne. Not mercy. Use. Caedran's eyes turned cold. Elira whispered, "You needed us." The flags answered with a long blue-white hiss. Caedran snapped, "Bind her." The command came too fast for Luceryn to stop every blade. Two war priests threw ash chains across the floor. They did not strike her body, they struck her shadow, pinning it beneath the burning flags. Pain shot through Elira's spine. The reverse flame flickered as if someone had closed a hand around her breath. Luceryn's control broke. A low dragon growl rolled through the ember hall. The air heated. The nobles stumbled back. For the first time, something vast moved behind the king's eyes, not a title, not a crown, but the dragon beneath the man. Caedran did not flinch. "Show them, Majesty. Show them why we kept the monster useful." Elira looked at Luceryn through the pain. If he lost control now, Caedran would win. The court would call the death warrant necessary. Mercy King would become proof of weakness. Dragon of Ruin would return as truth. "Luceryn," she said. His gaze snapped to her. "Not Majesty, not Conqueror." His name. The heat faltered. Elira's voice shook. "Do not become the record they wrote for you." The dragon in his eyes held there, trembling on the edge of fire. Then he turned from Caedran to the flags. "Read the clause," he said. Caedran's face changed. The flags obeyed. Blue-white fire tore through the rest of the death warrant, opening the final line hidden under layers of ash. Required witness for removal. Elira Voss, surviving bearer of the reverse. Flame branch. Elira stopped breathing. The ash chains tightened around her shadow. Caedran looked at her now, not with contempt. With purpose. "You were never kept to clean flags," he said. "You were kept to sign a king's death." The ash chains did not pull Elira down. They pulled her into the record. For one breath, the ember hall thinned around her. Nobles blurred behind flame. The 12 war flags stretched taller and darker until they no longer looked like cloth, but doors made of burned history. Beyond them, Elira saw a chamber of black stone, a lawful death room. That made it worse. At the center stood a table carved with dragon wings. Above it hung an empty banner waiting for a new title. Beside it lay a white dragonbone blade, not made for murder in secret, but for execution witnessed by law. The death warrant opened in the air. Witness consent required. Elira Voss. Her name flickered beneath the line like a signature the record wanted to steal. Caedran's voice followed her through the flame. "You were never kept to clean flags, you were kept to sign a king's death." Elira struggled against the ash chains. Pain tore through the scar on her face and ran down her throat. Every old ash mark opened like script, trying to answer the warrant before she could. Luceryn stepped toward her. "Do not touch the chains," Elira said. He stopped. The restraint cost him. Heat gathered around his hands, and the dragon behind his eyes pressed close to the surface. Caedran smiled. "One more step, Majesty. Burn the hall to save her. And every false record becomes true." Luceryn went still. Elira hated how well Caedran knew his wound. The court had not only made Luceryn look like a monster, it had trained him to fear every flame inside himself. The warrant turned toward Elira. The ash chains forced her shadow lower, trying to bow it into agreement. Caedran said, "Consent is not always spoken. Sometimes pain signs for the weak." The reverse flame shuddered across the banners. Even the war priest looked unsettled. Elira lifted her head. "That is your law? That is how kingdoms survive unwilling witnesses." "No," she said, "that is how traitors survive truth." The flags flared. Across all 12 banners, blue-white fire wrote the same words. Living Witness Branch confirmed. A murmur moved through the hall. Luceryn's voice came low. "She has standing," Caedran snapped. "Standing is not power." "No," Elira said. "It is why power fears the record." The death warrant trembled. The final line changed. "Did the witness consent?" The hall froze. Caedran lunged toward the warrant, but Luceryn caught his wrist before he could touch the flame. "Let it answer," Luceryn said. Caedran's face twisted. "You will destroy your own reign." Luceryn did not look away. "I would rather lose a reign than keep one built around my execution." Elira stared at him. That was not rescue. That was choice. The warrant waited. The chains tightened. Elira thought of every ash-maid before her. Every woman forced to breathe burned truth and then forbidden to speak it. Then she answered, "No, The word was small. The flags heard it like thunder. Blue-white fire cracked through the ash chains. The death warrant blackened at the edges. Witness refused. The words burned across it. For the first time, Ash Council law turned against itself. A noblewoman rose from the front row. Lady Seraphine. Her face was pale, but her voice cut clean. Then the witnesses compromised. A loyal witness would preserve the realm. Elira looked at her. A loyal witness preserves the truth. The pearl dagger at Seraphine's waist glinted. The western banner caught the glint. Blue-white flame opened a memory. Seraphine in the lower archive, younger, placing that same pearl dagger beside the death warrant. And noble Silbea. Ash Council. The court recoiled from her. Seraphine went white. Caedran cursed under his breath. Luceryn turned to the hall. Seal the doors. The great ember doors slammed shut. No noble escaped. The flags burned brighter, ready to name the rest. Then the death warrant curled open again. A hidden clause appeared beneath witness refused. If witness refuses, compel through blood-fire separation. Elira did not know what that meant. Caedran did. His fear vanished into purpose. Begin separation. The war priests cut their palms and threw red ash into the air. Luceryn's dragonfire surged. Elira shouted, "No!" Too late. The ash chains tightened around her shadow. Pain tore through every scar on her body. Then the blue-white reverse flame began to peel away from her skin. Not from the flags, from her, from the ash hidden beneath her scars. Elira screamed as the record was torn out of her by the roots. The death warrant drank the stolen flame. And above the ember throne, a new banner began writing itself in her bloodless ash. The new banner did not hang from the ceiling. It grew from the air above the ember throne. Bloodless ash gathered in long gray ribbons, twisting itself into cloth where no cloth had been. Blue-white flame bled through its edges, but the flame was weaker now. Torn from Elira's scars, it no longer burned backward with clean force. It flickered like a voice being strangled. Elira collapsed to one knee. Her hands struck the marble. For the first time since the flags had awakened, her scars went dark. The silence inside her body was more terrifying than pain. Caedran looked at the forming banner with grim satisfaction. Now the record can be corrected without the witness contaminating it. Luceryn stood between Elira and the war priests, dragonfire coiling around his shoulders. His eyes had turned almost fully gold. "Return it to her," he said. Caedran's smile was thin. "You still think the flame belongs to her?" Elira tried to speak. No sound came. The separation had not only taken the reverse flame, it had taken the ash memory from her throat. Lady Seraphine stepped forward, pearl dagger drawn. The witness refused lawful consent. Her branch is unstable. The Ash Council will preserve the realm. The new banner above the throne darkened. Words began forming across it. Mercy King removed by witness failure. Luceryn looked up. The lie was being written in real time. Not from an old record, from Elira's stolen fire. Elira forced herself to rise, but her legs shook. Without the ash burning in her scars, she felt emptied, like the court had finally cleaned her down to nothing. Caedran noticed. "Look at her," he told the hall. "This is what remains when borrowed power is removed from servant flesh." Elira lifted her head. Even without voice, she looked at him. That was all she had left. Caedran's expression tightened. Luceryn saw it. So did the flags. The old war flags trembled, weakly at first, then harder. The stolen flame above the throne tried to finish writing the death record, but the 12 original flags resisted. Their threads pulled backward, not through Elira's blood now, not through her scars, but through something older than the body. Memory already spoken. Sereth Ford flickered. Val's Gate flickered. Ashen Bridge flickered. The truth the court had heard could not be fully returned to silence. Caedran raised his burned hand. "Seal the old flags." The war priests began chanting. Luceryn moved. This time he did not reach for Elira. He reached for the nearest burning flag. Caedran shouted, "Majesty, do not touch reverse flame." Luceryn seized the cloth. Blue-white fire wrapped around his hand. The entire court gasped. Luceryn did not burn. He remembered. The flag showed him Sereth Ford again. Rain, surrender cloths. His younger self lowering a sword. He saw his own mercy, not as weakness, not as rumor, but as fact. The fire climbed his arm. Pain crossed his face. Elira tried to shout his name. Still nothing. Luceryn looked at her anyway. "I remember it," he said. The flag brightened. Caedran been still. Luceryn turned to the court. "I ordered mercy at Sereth Ford." The new death banner shuddered. One word vanished from it. Failure. Luceryn moved to the next flag. Val's Gate. He gripped the burning cloth. This time the pain drove him to one knee, but he held on. "I accepted surrender at Val's Gate." Another false word burned away from the death banner. Elira understood. Her stolen flame could write lies only if the living truth stayed unclaimed. Luceryn was taking the record into himself. Not to possess her power, to stop the court from using it against her. Caedran understood too. "Stop him," he ordered. No one moved. Not yet. Seraphine did. She rushed toward Elira with the pearl dagger raised. "If the witness lives, the flame will keep answering." Luceryn turned too late. Elira could not speak, could barely move, but she still had ash oil on her hands, the same ash oil they had given her to polish victory flags. She dragged her palm across the marble and smeared the gray oil into the path of Seraphine's step. The oil touched a fallen thread from the Sereth Ford banner. A tiny blue-white spark woke. Not inside Elira. On the floor, Seraphine stepped into it. The flame ran backward through the pearl dagger. The blade did not melt. It remembered. A hidden record flashed across the floor. Seraphine signing the death warrant, her pearl dagger laid across Luceryn's name, her voice whispering, "If mercy survives him, no noble house is safe." The court turned on her. Seraphine froze. Elira smiled faintly despite the emptiness in her throat. She was not powerless without the flame. She had spent her life cleaning what war left behind. She knew where ash would catch. Luceryn saw her smile. Something in his face changed. Not relief. Respect. Caedran's control cracked. "Kill the witness." The words were too naked, too honest. The court heard them. The old flags heard them. The stolen banner above the throne tore down its center. For a heartbeat, the blue-white flame inside it reached toward Elira like a severed thing trying to return home. Caedran thrust his hand into the torn banner and forced the flame back. His dragon-bone clasp shattered completely. Inside the broken pieces, a final seal fell to the marble. Black, old, royal. Luceryn stared at it. Caedran's face drained of color. Elira could not ask the question, but the flags did. The seal opened in blue-white fire and revealed the authority behind the Ash Council. Not marshal, not priest, not noblewoman. A royal widow's seal. Luceryn whispered, "My mother." The new banner above the throne stopped tearing. Then it began to write a name the court had not dared speak in years. Queen Veyr had been dead for 9 years. That was what the court had been told. That was what Luceryn had been told. But the blue-white flame did not write the names of the dead the way priests did. It did not soften them with honor. It did not wrap them in incense or marble. It wrote Marath's name like a blade pulled clean from a hidden sheath. The ember hall went colder than winter stone. Luceryn stood beneath the half-formed death banner, one hand still burned around the edge of the Val's Gate flag. The name above him stripped something from his face that no accusation against his own wars had managed to touch. His mother. Elira could not speak, but she saw the wound land. Not political. Personal. Caedran recovered first, though the color had not returned to his face. A widow's seal proves nothing. Queen Marath authorized many contingency laws before her death. The flame around the royal seal bent backward. The word death burned away. Beneath it, another word appeared. Exile. A whisper broke through the court. Luceryn stared at the seal. She was not buried. No one answered. The flags did. The western banner opened into a memory. A woman in black, gold mourning robe, standing in the lower war archive, her hair silver at the temples, her face beautiful and severe. Queen Veyr, not dead, not weak, not grieving, commanding. Before her stood Caedran, younger and kneeling. Beside him stood Seraphine with her pearl dagger, the war priest, and 3 shadowed counselors. Marath's voice slid through the hall. "My son's mercy will ruin what his father conquered. If he will not become the monster the border fears, then the court must make him one." Luceryn did not move. Elira wanted to reach him. She could not. Her voice was still trapped where the reverse flame had been torn from her scars. The memory continued. Caedran bowed his head. And if he resists the record? Merath placed her seal on the death warrant. Then prepare the Mercy King clause. Luceryn closed his eyes. Only once. When he opened them, the dragonfire in them had gone still. Not calm, worse. The stillness before a mountain breaks. Caedran spoke quickly. She preserved the dynasty. Luceryn turned his head toward him. She preserved control. She knew you. No, Luceryn said. She named what she feared and called it knowing me. The stolen banner above the throne shook. Elira felt a faint ache in her scars. Not flame returning. Apul. The reverse flame was close, but the death warrant still held it. It hovered above the throne, using her stolen ash to write Luceryn's removal under his mother's seal. The words began forming again. Mercy King subject to lawful removal by royal widow authority. Elira forced herself to stand. Her knees nearly failed. No voice. No flame. No court standing except the truth already dragged from her skin. She looked at the ash oil smeared across her palms, then at the floor beneath the banners. There were still threads there. Burned banner fibers. Splinters of dragon bone. Dust from Caedran's shattered clasp. The hall was full of things powerful people had dropped because they thought only bodies mattered. Elira knelt, not in surrender, to gather ash. Caedran noticed too late. What is she doing? Luceryn turned. Elira pressed her ash-dark hands to the marble and dragged them across the floor in a circle around herself. The motion tore pain through her empty scars, but the ash remembered her touch. A thin blue-white spark moved through the circle, not enough to restore her. Enough to write. The first letter formed slowly. A. Then another. Le. The court watched in stunned silence as Elira wrote her own name with ash oil, banner dust, and the remains of the broken seal. Elira Vos. The moment the final letter closed, the stolen flame above the throne recoiled. The death banner faltered. Caedran lunged toward her. Break the circle. Luceryn moved faster. He stepped between Caedran and Elira, dragonfire rising around him in a controlled ring. Not wild, not monstrous. Chosen. You wanted me afraid of my fire, he said. I am finished obeying fear. Caedran's expression twisted. Then burn me, Majesty. Prove the record right. Luceryn's fire sharpened. For one heartbeat, the hall waited for ruin. Elira slammed her ash-covered palm against the floor. The spark in the circle flared. The written name burned brighter. Luceryn stopped. He understood. Caedran wanted flame without witness. Punishment without record. A monster easy to condemn. Luceryn lowered his hand. No, he said. You will be read. The flags roared. The circle around Elira answered. Her name on the floor pulled at the stolen banner like a hook through cloth. The blue-white flame inside it strained toward her, but Queen Merath's seal burned black, holding it in place. Then the ember throne cracked. Not from Luceryn's fire. From beneath. A hidden compartment split open under the royal seat, revealing a narrow black casket bound in dragonbone wire. It had been there for years, under every feast, every judgment, every false victory, sung in Luceryn's name. The casket opened. Inside lay a strip of burned veil, a widow's crown shard, and a folded order sealed with Merath's living mark. The flags read it aloud. If my son chooses mercy over conquest, bind his fire to the witness branch and remove both. Elira's blood went cold. Both. Luceryn looked at her then. The court saw the same truth he did. The death warrant had never been meant for the king alone. It needed the reverse flame witness too. Above the throne, the stolen banner finished its final line. Mercy King and living witness to be burned together before dawn. The court did not look at Luceryn first. It looked at Elira. That was how she knew the warrant had already begun to work. A king's death was terrifying, but a servant's death was convenient. If the court could make her the price of saving him, half the nobles in the Ember Hall would call it mercy before sunrise. Elira stood inside the ash circle, with her name burning weakly beneath her feet. Elira Vos. Not Ashen. Not Vessel. Not Witness Branch. Anama. The stolen banner above the throne pulled at her like a hook beneath the ribs. Every empty scar on her face and throat ached toward it. The reverse flame had been torn from her body, but it still knew where it had lived. Luceryn stood between her and the court, his controlled dragon fire circling low around his hands. Caedran saw the danger. Majesty, step away from her. Luceryn did not move. Caedran raised his voice. If you stand with the witness, the warrant binds you together. The court will have no choice. Lady Seraphine, pale and shaking now, still found enough cruelty to speak. The realm can survive a dead witness. It cannot survive a king who lets servant Ash govern dragon law. Elira tried to answer. No sound came. The separation had left her throat hollow. The humiliation of that almost broke her more than pain. All her life, they had made her silent with rank. Now they had made her silent with law. Luceryn heard the absence. He turned just enough to see her face. Can you write? Elira looked down at the ash circle. Her hands trembled. Then she nodded. Caedran's eyes narrowed. Do not let her touch another record. Luceryn's voice cut through him. Then stop speaking as if you still command this hall. Caedran laughed once. I command what your mother built beneath it. The floor answered him. Thin lines of black fire spread from the ember throne, crawling toward Elira's ash circle. Not reverse flame, not dragon fire. Warrant fire. Legal fire. It did not burn stone. It burned standing. Where it touched the floor, Elira's written name began to fade. Luceryn looked at the flags. How was it stopped? The old war flags flickered weakly. They could not answer fully while the stolen banner held Elira's flame. Elira knelt before the black fire reached the last letter of her name. With shaking fingers, she dragged ash oil through the circle and wrote one word. Read. Luceryn saw it. He turned to the court. Read the warrant aloud. No one moved. Caedran's expression changed. Majesty, I advise silence. Of course you do, Luceryn said. Silence has served you well. He looked at the war priests, the archivists, the seal bearers, every noble who had survived by pretending not to understand what records cost. Read it. Still no one moved. Then a voice came from the lower wall. Not noble, not priest, an old ash-maid, bent with age, lifted her soot-stained hand. Mercy King and living witness to be burned together before dawn, she read. The stolen banner shook. Another ash-maid joined. Removal. Authorized by royal widow authority. A young page whispered. Witness branch to be separated from reverse. Flame before execution. The black warrant fire slowed. Elira understood. Law fed on silence. A read law became accountable. She wrote faster. Names. Luceryn followed her gaze. Read the names attached. The archivist, near the western pillar, flinched. The flags turned toward him. He swallowed. Queen Merath Veyr. Lord Marshal Caedran Voss. Lady Seraphine Ardent. High War Priest Orville. Archivist Rennick Hale. Each name struck the stolen banner like a blade. Seraphine cried out when her name burned on the cloth. Caedran's face went cold. You think names end power? Elira wrote one more word. Witness. Luceryn read it aloud. Witness. The ash-maids along the wall repeated it. Witness. The servants repeated it next. Then the lower soldiers. Not all nobles. Not yet, but enough. The stolen banner tore at one corner. Blue-white flame leaked out, thin and desperate, reaching toward Elira's scars. She reached back. The moment the flame touched her fingertips, pain ripped through her body. Every ash mark opened again, but this time the fire did not enter as a burden forced on her. It asked. The question was not spoken, but Elira felt it clearly. Carry? She almost wept. All her life, they had made her carry. Bowls. Ash. Cloth. Silence. Burned records. Names she was not allowed to know. Now the flame asked. Elira closed her burned fingers around it. Yes. The reverse flame rushed back into her scars. She did not become powerful in a blaze. She nearly collapsed. Luceryn stepped toward her, then stopped, giving her the dignity of standing before offering help. Elira rose slowly. Blue-white script moved across her scarred cheek, down her throat, along both arms. The court saw the archive they had made of her, and she was still alive. Caedran's control finally broke. Kill her now. No one moved fast enough. Luceryn turned. His dragonfire rose, but he did not strike. Elira wrote one last line in the ash circle with a trembling hand. The witness refuses both deaths. The stolen banner split open. Queen Marath's seal screamed in the flame. From inside the torn banner, a new memory fell across the hall. Marath alive in exile, placing her hand on a living dragon's skull, swearing that if Luceryn would not become a conqueror, she would return through the war records and crown whoever would. The court recoiled. Luceryn stared at the memory. She is alive. Caedran's smile returned, terrible and loyal. At dawn, he said, she comes to finish what mercy failed to become. The Ember Hall doors shook. Once, twice. Then a woman's voice spoke from beyond them, elegant and cold. Open for your queen. The Ember Hall doors opened for the dead queen, not because anyone commanded them, because the old war records still obeyed her. Queen Marath Veyr entered beneath a crown of blackened gold, her mourning veil trailing over the marble like smoke that had learned to walk. She looked older than the memory, but not weak. Her face was pale, beautiful, and cold enough to make nobles lower their eyes before remembering she had no throne here anymore. Luceryn did not bow. Elira stood inside the ash circle, reverse flame burning through every scar on her skin. The pain was nearly too much to hold, but the flame had asked this time. That made the burden different. Hers. Marath looked at her son first, then at Elira. Ash should have stayed where it was placed, the queen said. Elira's voice returned rough and scraped raw. You placed it in us because parchment could burn and servants could be blamed. So the ash-maid speaks. Elira vos, Luceryn said. The hall went still. Marath's eyes cooled. You always were too easily moved by wounded things. Luceryn's face did not change. No, I was trained to mistake mercy for weakness. The stolen death banner above the throne straightened. Black fire crawled through its torn edge. At dawn, Marath said, the Mercy King and his witness will burn together. Then the court will record that my son died, preserving the realm from forbidden ash. Luceryn's dragonfire rose. Elira shook her head once. Marath wanted fire without witness. She wanted the monster she had spent years writing. Luceryn lowered his hand. Control. Elira stepped forward inside the ash circle. You cannot use witness law after the witness refuses. Marath smiled faintly. Child, witness law was never made for refusal. It was made to make refusal useful. Black fire dropped from the death banner like a noose and wrapped around Elira's ash circle, eating the letters of her name. Luceryn moved. Elira spoke first. Read her. The old ash-maid by the wall understood before the nobles did. Her voice rose, thin but steady. Queen Marath Veyr, Royal Widow Authority. A page continued, shaking. Prepared the Mercy King death clause, a lower soldier added. Authorized witness branch separation. The black fire faltered. More voices joined. Servants first. Then soldiers. Then the war priest who had looked away too many times. Ordered mercy records converted into conquest records. Preserved false war titles. Prepared removal of Dragon King Luceryn Veyr. Commanded burning of the living witness branch. Each line struck the stolen banner. Its black fire thinned, leaking blue-white light. Marath's composure cracked. You ate from those victories. You wore their safety. Do not pretend innocence because an ash girl gave you words for guilt. The hall wavered. Because it was true enough to hurt. Elira lifted both scarred hands. Then let guilt stand, but do not let it hide. The reverse flames surged from her scars into the war flags. Not all at once. One thread at a time. Every ash-maid raised her hands. Every servant who had carried burned records stepped forward. Even some soldiers placed their palms against the marble. The court saw it then. Elira was not alone. The Voss witness branch had survived in kitchens, laundries, lower archives, ash rooms, and scarred lungs. The court had made servants breathe the truth until truth learned how to breathe back. Marath stepped back for the first time. Luceryn walked to the ember throne and took the black crown from its resting place. Every noble held its breath. Then he set the crown on the floor. I will not wear conquest records as a crown, he said. Not while they name mercy as treason. Marath's voice went cold. Then you are no king. The 12 war flags answered before he could. Blue-white fire stripped the old titles from the crown itself. Flame, tyrant, city, burner, ash, crowned conqueror, dragon of ruin. Each name burned away. Beneath them, one title remained. The Mercy King. Mareth laughed. A death name. Luceryn looked at Elira. Only if the witness consents. Elira stepped beside him, not behind him. Her scars burned bright enough to light the throne. The witness refuses, she said. The stolen banner split in two. Mareth's seal screamed as the reverse flame ran backward through every hidden clause, every exile order, every death warrant, until it reached the first command buried beneath the war archives. If my son chooses mercy, make him feared. The flame burned backward through the sentence. Make him feared became let him be known. The ember hall shook. Mareth staggered as the black crown shard in her veil cracked. Caedran fell to his knees as his martial seals turned to ash. Seraphine dropped her pearl dagger. The war flags lowered, not in defeat. In testimony, Luceryn turned to the guards. Queen Mareth Veyr, Lord Marshal Caedran Vos, Lady Seraphine Ardent, and every named member of the Ash Council will stand public trial before the witness branch and the court. Mareth lifted her chin. You would put your mother on trial? Luceryn's voice broke only once. Yes. That single word cost him more than any battle. The guards took her. No secret cell. No quiet execution. Public record. That was the reversal. Elira's knees weakened. Luceryn turned toward her at once, but stopped before touching. May I? He asked. The question was quiet. Elira looked at him. This was the man whose name had frightened kingdoms. The man who had failed to question the record soon enough. The man who had chosen, in the end, to lose his monsterhood before using it. She nodded. Only then did he catch her. His arms were warm, steady, and careful around her. I cannot undo what my throne made you carry, he said. No, Elira whispered. I will not ask you to polish my banners again. A tired, broken laugh left her. That is a small beginning. It is not all I intend. He did not say love. Not there. Not before the ash cooled. Instead, he turned to the hall with Elira standing beside him. From this night, he said, no victory flag will hang until the witness branch has read it. No mercy will be recorded as slaughter. No servant will be renamed for the ash they were forced to carry. The 12 flags burned blue-white once more. Then they settled, not as victory flags, as witness flags. Elira looked at the largest banner above the throne. The title Mercy King still glowed there, no longer like a death warrant, like a promise waiting to be proven. Luceryn looked at her scarred hands. Will you remain, Elira Vos? She knew what he was asking. Not as ash-maid, not as servant, as witness, she said. His gaze softened. As witness. Outside, dawn touched the high windows of the Ember Hall. For the first time, the war flags did not burn forward into glory. They burned backward into truth. And when the court began again, it did not begin with conquest. It began with mercy. It began with witness. It began with her name.